Okay, speaking of archaic textures, as we work our way up through the substances, we're going to go for something a little bit more durable this time. Now we're going to go with iron. Iron, I-R-O-N. I don't know if you can figure that out from my southern accent, but we're talking about iron. All right, iron. Um, Now, in archaic times, working with irony, um, was not nearly as an advanced science as it is today. So we don't want things. We don't want to create a material, a texture map. I mean, that looks something like it came out of a modern factory. We want it to look like it was made with primitive tools, primitive techniques, primitive technology. I think the word is, and correct me if I'm wrong, wrought iron. Wrought, Wrought. Um, and that's, kind of goes with the whole, medieval blacksmithing thing. Um, even up to, from ancient times up to the Civil War, not the Civil War era. Well, yeah, actually, the Civil War era. A little bit before the Civil War era, or right around that time, pre-industrial, of course. Everything was just real heavy iron. It wasn't an alloy. They just mined iron out of the earth, melted it down, and poured it into whatever shape they needed. Horseshoes, farming implements, weapons, of course, uh, steel bands around barrels, all kinds of stuff going back, for like 1,000 years. So anyhow, like I said, this is not a history class, although it would be kind of fun too. It helps to know your history, not just of Western history, by the way. So another recommendation would be to take a history class as your heritage and humanities requirement um, for your game design degree. Anywho, it's just the more you know, the more you can do, the more you can do, the more you're worth to a potential employer. That's rule number one in any job market. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make an iron texture that looks like it's really rough, poorly made, crudely fashioned, kind of weathered, beaten, all kinds of stuff like that. Of course, the first thing we're going to do is the first thing we're going to do is get the creative juices flowing. There goes my diet. But I'm totally losing my voice, so anything for the troops, anything for the students. Um, Iron is dark, so we're just going to um, start with a black background. And um, let's see here. I think for this, we'll skip the whole clouds and the noise thing because what we can do is we can go ahead and go to, let's see here. No, I don't want fibers. What am I thinking here? Actually, I'm going to be using dust and scratches here in a minute. Oh, yeah, we're going to need a layer with clouds. I should have known better to think that you could start any texture without clouds. So render clouds and mess around with them till you get mostly dark. If you want, you can even go to render difference clouds and skip the whole process. And now we go to filter gallery and ooh, that's a bit much. Yeah. Tell you what. Let's try. Let's try that without the clouds. Um, try sponge without the clouds. Yeah. So I was right in the first place. You don't need clouds for this one. All right. So I just deleted my clouds layer. All right. Now what this does is it gives the black background a pitted look. Um, as you expose iron or any kind of metal, most kinds of metal, to the environment, it reacts with the oxygen in the atmosphere in a process called oxidization. And I know this is not a science class either, but as a texture artist, you need to know these things. I mean, read lots of books. Science is your friend. Science, history, art, programming. Um, so, this oxidization process is something that most people call rusting. So, as iron rusts out in the environment, parts of its surface flake away. And that's what this represents. Now, there's a couple of different ways to do this. We're going to lift the oxidization, actually, the non oxidized parts up. But again, since I've been kind of having a running joke with myself about never using the magic wand tool, I'm going to use the magic wand tool and see if this works. This probably will not work, but I'm dying of curiosity here. So I'm going to do select with a threshold of 3, and then I'm going to do a similar, and this is just going to be a train wreck, but I can't wait to see it. And then I'm going to lift that, Control J there, and now I have got the non-oxidized raised part of the texture. And I'm going to see how that's really rough. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and make this really, really, really low, like 0.05, maybe 0.1. Okay, maybe 1. Yeah, set it to 1 at the most. And you probably see where I'm going to go with this. I'm just going to throw out some bevel and emboss here. Not that hard to figure out. See how that gives it a real pitted look now? We want the size, though. I'm going to really decrease that because it's just a very finely pitted surface there. You might even want to soften it up just a bit. Yeah, there we go. Set the angle to 135. And bring the altitude down to about 50, 60, something like that. So it's a very, very subtle effect. There we go. Use these. Don't do what I was just doing. Sorry, I got kind of off track there. Let's see. Gloss contour. We can mess around with that, but really it's pretty fine the way it is. That actually reverses it. But I do just want to show you what some of these things can do. Besides just completely mess up your project. Obviously, we want this one. But let's just take a look and see what else is out there. That one's kind of cool. Definitely gives it kind of a pitted look, but it's too soft there. But I like this because it's really rough. Let's see here. Now that's interesting. That would be a good thing for terrain. And if it's highly pitted, you might want to go with something like that, but we can experiment later. I don't want to waste your time constantly doing this. So let's just leave it at something like that. Now that's a very pitted iron look. That means it's about time to throw whatever this is away if it's that rusted. So let's just go back to what we had originally. And now I can't get back to it. So let's just hit cancel and try that again. go. Bring that down. 135, 50, boom. Okay. Now the last thing I want to do though is I mentioned rust. As iron oxidizes, it takes on this reddish hue. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, and feel free to email me and correct me if I'm wrong, the red in blood, the red color in blood, comes from the iron in blood. So, kind of just, I don't know, a little off there. But what I'm going to do is I am going to create a new layer between the background and the raised area. And I'm going to put some dark red in there. Not that dark. And I'm going to go to filter. Guess what? Clouds. Didn't see that one coming. And from here we can just kind of mess with it, just kind of have a little bit of fun. We definitely want this to be very, very faint as well. We hardly want any red to show through, just a tint. Not even a tint, just a pinch. So we'll go to filter. We'll just see what we can come up with in the filter gallery here. There's all kinds of fun things. We could do sponge again, but that's already been done. I do like it though. I'm actually going to leave it there just for grins and giggles. But we might want to do rough pastels, palette and knife. Film grain is actually the better choice here. And then we're just going to set the opacity to like 20%. Not even that, 10%. Maybe even 8. I'm going to bring up the saturation a bit though. All right. I am going to add a little bit of noise to that as well. Uniform in this case. And there we go. So, I might even lower that to 50%. So there's the rusted surface itself. Now, the interesting thing is about this is I've spent all this time replicating a surface. Chances are you would actually be, well, first of all, if you look at metal, if you look at iron, it is it's pretty much solid black minus the imperfections. But what gives it its depth, what gives it its texture to the actual physical touch, is it's pitted like this. I mean, if you rub your hand over it, it's going to feel rough. Even if it's something that's brand new, that's only been out for a day, it's just cooled down from the blacksmith. It's going to feel rough to the touch if you're back in the Middle Ages, because they didn't have the metalworking techniques that we have now. So we've done all this to simulate a rough surface. If we were going to actually apply this in Blender, we would create a displacement map, a bump map, or height map, whatever you want to call it, to do that for us. For this kind of application, I would only use this for small details. If I was making the side of a battleship, I would not use this. So this is just for small details like nails or iron bands or parts of a weapon, handheld weapon, something like that. And I'll show you how to do that here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in together with my wooden table, the wooden planks that I made earlier. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to flatten all of this. And then I'm going to convert my marquee to an elliptical marquee, grab a circle of it, doesn't have to be exactly in the middle, but it does have to make sure that nothing is cut off. There we go. Just going to copy that, and before I forget, I'm going to undo to the point where I don't have my layers smashed together. And I'm going to bring it into here. I'm just going to hit edit, paste. And the first thing I'm going to do is filter, distort, spherize. And I'm just going to keep doing that until it looks like it's round. Actually, that's good enough the first time. Then I'm just going to bring this in here. Of course, see how we've lost all that detail? Oh well. But I am going to put a bevel and emboss on this, and a drop shadow as well. Actually, no, I didn't mean to do that at first. Before I apply bevel and emboss, I'm going to duplicate that layer and bring that together like that, and create nails at the bottom, combine those, duplicate, move, merge down, duplicate, move, merge down, duplicate, move, maybe. Merge down. So we got the nails layer over here. Now bevel and emboss. I said bevel and emboss. All right. There we go. We definitely want a chisel approach to this. It's one of the rare cases where I was going to use the chisel hard option. I'm going to bring the depth down just a bit. Anything more looks kind of comical. And I'm going to do drop shadow as well. It gives it some depth. I'm going to try something here. Yeah, there it is. Pillow emboss. Something that doesn't get used nearly enough. Because we're going to assume that these nails have been countersunk in. That gives us the pillow emboss. And there you go. So now see how we can start combining textures and techniques to create the surface of an actual real world object using non-photorealistic but almost photorealistic CGI techniques. We could put in some other things. We could, bring in some of the stuff from the steampunk lessons and start adding some brass in here. All kinds of fun stuff. But anyhow, that's the basis of iron. Really, really rough, poorly made, crudely made iron.